It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. It's time for The Verdict.
And welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett, and I am joined as always by one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers. And Kent, really a special show today.
It is a special show with a very special guest, a longtime friend of mine, Kathryn Taylor, former law partner of mine. Kathy is the Director of Commerce and Tourism and many other things for Governor Henry in the state of Oklahoma. She's going to be here today to talk about the EDGE program, EDGE, and tell us what that is. It's about making Oklahoma better and more attractive to people who want to relocate. Kathy has a lot of jobs. She has a lot of insight. She has fit in with Governor Henry and his cabinet in quite a nice way, and we are very pleased that she'd come here and visit with us today. I think it's going to be very informative for our viewers, and we probably ought to get with it.
Kathy Taylor wears a lot of hats, and this morning she'll share some of her vision with us. It's Oklahoma's Secretary of Commerce, Kathryn Taylor, next on The Verdict. And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, who's going to introduce our guest.
We are really pleased today to have Kathy Taylor with us. She is Governor Henry's Secretary of Commerce and Tourism since February of this year. She's an OU undergraduate and law graduate. She has engaged in the private law practice since graduating from school. She has also been in private business, has served on the board of directors of a number of national and international companies, has a significant amount of business experience, and is very actively involved in economic development in Oklahoma. This is her first visit with us on The Verdict. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for including me.
Well, we're really glad you're here. You're the Secretary of Commerce, and tell us about briefly the Commerce Department, what it does, how big is it, what's its mission?
I think many people don't know about the Commerce Department in the state, and so I'm glad you asked. We are the lead agency in the state for business, community, and workforce development. We, for example, house the Main Street program, the program that helps communities across the state revitalize their main streets. We provide assistance to communities. We distribute probably about $20 million of community development block grants to communities across the state to assist them with infrastructure, to be ready for businesses to be there. We work with local communities in assisting them in recruiting new businesses, and just as importantly, we help retain our businesses that are already in the state and help them find ways to expand.
How many people are in your department?
We have 122 employees.
What do they do on a daily basis?
Are
they spread out all over offices across the state, or are they all in Oklahoma City?
The majority of them are in Oklahoma City. We also have an office in Tulsa, and we have about 4 people out in the various quadrants of the state as well. The majority of those people deal with the communities, rural communities, helping do community development block grants and helping economic development planning. We have a partnership with a private group, a nonprofit group called the Oklahoma Community Institute, and they work and assist us in helping train communities to be ready for economic development. We have a group that exclusively counsels companies on how to increase their revenues by exporting their products. We maintain offices in 6 countries around the world to assist in that matchmaking process to help Oklahoma companies increase revenues through exports.
We've got state employees in 6 different...
No, we actually contract. They're independent contractors that we contract with.
Well, you also have responsibility for tourism.
I do.
Tell me what that means.
Well, it's the tourism is the state parks, lodges, and resorts, and then also our tourism marketing, basically getting, as they say, heads in beds in the state of Oklahoma, bringing people to our restaurants and our businesses here. And the governor put those two together under the cabinet secretary position because they're two very important legs of economic development. And we want our messaging and our branding to be very tourism and very business friendly.
Do you determine policy, or do you carry out the governor's policy? How would you relate that?
We work with the governor at his direction in supporting him in the development of his policy, and then certainly implementing it.
Kathy, certainly since Governor Henry has been elected and serving, we have all heard about the EDGE program. And I understand that to be an acronym for Economic Development Generating Excellence.
Yes.
How did that get started, and why did it get started?
The governor felt like we needed to do an examination of the state's economy and develop that action plan for where we were headed. My analogy is that often what we were doing in the state of Oklahoma is we were swinging at every ball that came across the plate, whether it was good or bad, and we needed to focus and develop an action plan. And we needed to do that in partnership with our education system because our workforce is an important part of economic development. So he charged the chancellor, Paul Risser, and myself to develop this program and ask that it have very widespread involvement of citizens across the state. So we developed 23 committees, expert committees, 12 of which analyzed industries in the state, 11 of which analyzed business and quality of life issues. About 250 people involved in those expert committees, and they were fascinating. They were all, every presentation was interesting. I suppose I learned the most from the weather presentation. Calvin Drogelmeyer, who chaired that, is the head of the weather meteorology department at the University of Oklahoma, and we have a world-class industry in weather in Oklahoma that really no one in the United States can touch. So those 250 people presented their reports. We then had meetings at 30 locations across the state that were attended by over 2,500 Oklahoma citizens. They received anyone who asked received advance copies of the recommendations. They were able to comment on those. We received another 10,000 hits on the EDGE website of comments.
Well, how many people do you have delegated to EDGE from your department? It sounds like an enormous project.
It is. It's our 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. work often, but Amy Polanchek, who is our lead economist, is really leading the charge for us. But there have been people from almost every division at our department involved, and as well as a number of people from higher education.
What are you learning from these people? Are you learning anything that you didn't know before?
I am learning that Oklahomans are ready to aggressively move forward. The status quo, they understand the status quo will not work. I'm learning that Oklahomans are tired of partisan politics. They really want to see a bipartisan approach on behalf of the state of Oklahoma. And that there is a real energy out there to be unleashed. Someone needs to unleash it and guide it.
Kathy, how does the significant number of committees convert committee meetings and talking around the table into action, into doing things outside the committee meeting?
The expert committees presented their reports to the steering committee. The steering committee is comprised of about 15 people from across the state, from every walk of life, educators, business owners, business leaders, Republicans, Democrats. The main objective of the steering committee was to have a diverse group of opinions to take these reports in. They heard the expert panel reports, and now they've met about 4 times and are putting together their recommendation to the governor. We're hitting the holiday season, and I think that task was much more ambitious than they realized. But they have a very good start at the report, and I think they'll have it out in the middle of January.
Once the report comes out, then what happens?
Well, there will be both legislative and non-legislative items that will need to be tackled. The legislative items obviously will be taken to the legislature hopefully with the help of the steering committee and certainly the governor and others that have been involved to get some things passed. We for example, need to review our very favorable quality jobs program, which has been tremendous for the state but it's been in place for 10 years. It's time to tweak that for the economy that we're heading into. So there will be legislative issues. Then there are non-legislative concepts in the EDGE program that we've already had some groups step up and say, we'll take responsibility for. One of my personal favorites is a concept to raise money for communities, to use in the communities for beautification projects, for example.
Private money.
Private money. But the concept of how to do this is called One Dinner Party Across Oklahoma. It leverages the concept that, and the knowledge that we all have, that Oklahoma is a very friendly state and a very community-oriented state. And so one night across the state, every community will host maybe one or more dinner parties. The funds from that will stay in the community for a specific project, perhaps the entrance to the community, perhaps parks.
Let me jump in here and get us to a break. Kathryn Taylor, the Secretary of Commerce, will be right back. You're watching The Verdict. And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. This week's guest is Secretary of Commerce Kathryn Taylor. We're discussing the many roles in which her office participates. Kent, what's next?
I want to talk again about the EDGE program, and a phrase that's used on the EDGE website, and I think is part of the doctrine, is that it implies an active partnership among government, universities, and private business. What kind of partnership do you envision, or what kind of partnership is there?
Well, when you look at economic development studies across the United States and you see those states and communities that have been the most successful, that's the partnership that you see. An aggressive partnership where university research is supporting industries that are important to the state, and industries are participating in the government process to ensure that the business climate remains positive for those. And government then, along with that, is a partner with higher ed and in workforce development. It's all really a basic building blocks that we have to have a very strong foundation in before we can aggressively grab the place that we deserve in economic development.
Well, let me show a graphic that kind of illustrates how well Oklahoma is doing in some polls as far as being friendly to the business environment. And I'll save you the effort. Oklahoma is number 3 here behind Virginia and North Carolina, but presumably there are 47 states and perhaps the District of Columbia ranked below us. How accurate is this study? What's it based on?
It's very accurate. It's an independent study done by a major real estate site consultant firm, and they look at our incentives, they look at our business taxes, they look at our business climate, and Oklahoma it always rates very high. We have a training for industry program. When a company comes in or an Oklahoma company expands and they need their workforce trained, our career tech system trains those employees for them at their site or at the career tech site at the state's expense. It's a significant program considering our career tech system was rated 3rd in the nation and is always rated in the top 5. So I could go on and on with statistics. What we find when we talk to site consultants and companies and we compare our data to the data of other states that are competing against us, Oklahoma always fares very well.
Now, the I Believe program, what's that about?
Well, that's what the program that the governor really started in his campaign and the Department of Commerce started last year as well. I Believe in Oklahoma, to help Oklahomans remember that this is a great place to live. Often Oklahomans are the ones that seem to have the least amount of boastfulness. And I always say, well, remember what Will Rogers said, and that is, it ain't bragging if it's true. So we need to get those facts. We need to educate Oklahomans about what a great state this is. We should be proud of it. And when we go outside our borders, every Oklahoman needs to be selling the state.
Well, are you running into instances of that not happening, that perhaps Oklahomans have a low self-esteem?
It's either a low self-esteem or they're very humble. The Norman Transcript recently had a quote that said, what does Oklahoma have? What does Texas have that Oklahoma doesn't? Arrogance, that's it. So we just need to be more boastful. This state has produced more flown astronauts than any other state in the United States. Every Boeing plane that's up in the air right now has a part produced in Oklahoma. We have an incredibly productive workforce, but the site consultants say Oklahoma's the best kept secret.
And mainly it's the best kept secret because our own citizens, fellow citizens, don't know it.
They don't, and they don't know the facts, they don't know the state. I recently went to Beavers Bend State Park and saw the Texas license plates, which I'm happy to have, but I started talking to Oklahomans about that park and about the fly fishing and the gorgeous pine trees, and I found that many Oklahomans didn't know where it was located. So we really need to learn about our state.
When you give a speech to a group of Oklahomans, where do you start? What's the first? What do you focus on, and how do you close? Give us the beginning and the end of your speech to Oklahoma.
I tell them that I have a job for them that's not going to cost them anything, but that's going to be a great help for the state. It's not going to pay them anything, but not going to cost them anything, and that is to take the personal responsibility to sell the state. And then I give them facts about the state, famous Oklahomans who have come here. I remind them that the thing that we fight the most is the Grapes of Wrath Dust Bowl. Now, I find the Grapes of Wrath to be positive because the Jodes were a pretty amazing family.
Morally strong.
Morally strong, and could really conquer, anything. But in addition, I find when I go outside the state, people think that we're a desert. Well, in fact, we're one of the few states that has all 11 ecosystems. We're the only state that has a state park in each of those ecosystems. We can go from the dunes to, green country, and most Oklahomans just don't realize the diversity of our state.
Let's get back to EDGE for a moment. What's the progress? We've just started, I know, and I don't want to expect a great amount of results now because it's such a broad concept. But where are we now, and what progress have we already made?
I think we've made substantial progress in educating those almost 12,500 Oklahomans and all the people that they've talked to about the need for the state to focus its economic development efforts and to make some transformational, bold changes. Some of those changes, many of them, are going to cause significant discussion and potentially controversy, as change does. But I think we are very far along the road in educating Oklahomans about the need for focused economic development.
Kathy, look ahead into our crystal ball, if you will, and tell us, without divulging any secrets, tell us what you think will be happening in the next year through EDGE and other efforts, and in the next 5 years. What will our viewers expect to see happen in Oklahoma?
I think Oklahoma will be developing some centers of excellence where we are world-renowned. Mentioned the Weather Center at University of Oklahoma, or Weather News America, large Japanese company, just moved their operations from California to Norman, Oklahoma. We have some incredible nanotechnology research going on at Oklahoma State University that is cutting edge, and I believe industry will support that and we'll develop some centers of excellence. Same thing at OSU Tulsa, where we're doing advanced materials. We're doing advanced materials research, which is really the next generation of where we need to be in the aerospace industry. I predict the aerospace industry will become an even more significant part of our economy, and we'll be a true leader in that industry.
Kathryn Taylor, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the Secretary of Commerce spending her time with us. We'll be right back with a few final words.
Okay.
We are back to wrap up another edition of The Verdict. We spent some time with Kathy Taylor, the Secretary of Commerce, a very impressive person.
Yes, and with quite a few duties. Joining commerce with tourism, with workforce development is a real load to carry, and she seems to be doing a grand job with it. As someone that has known her for quite some time, that isn't a surprise to me that she would do well. On a related topic, Governor Henry seems to have, in his first year of service to the citizens of Oklahoma as governor, seems to have surrounded himself with people of great quality and intellect and energy. And I think that's going to serve our citizens well. Not that Governor Keating didn't do the same thing, but it seems to be a mark of a good leader to be able to surround yourself with people who are quite capable. I think Oklahoma, just as Oklahoma City, having great leadership with people we all know, has seen maps bring about enormous changes in Oklahoma City. I think the state of Oklahoma is going to have its own, if you'll pardon the comparison, its own maps development to develop all parts of the state. And if it is under the tutelage of Kathy Taylor, it's very likely to happen, because she doesn't take no for an answer, and it's very likely to be very effective.
Well, let me remind viewers they can go to our website and have an opportunity to give us some input on a future show that you would like to see. It's at theverdict.tv. Thanks again to our guest, Secretary of Commerce Kathryn Taylor. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.